Welcome to the Real News Network. I'm Sharmini Pires coming to you from Baltimore. What's next for the Democrats and what can we expect from a Donald Trump presidency? Come January 20th, Democrats will no longer control any of the branches of the federal government, certainly not the presidency, Congress, or the Supreme Court. Also, they control a minority of state governorships, as well as a minority of state legislatures. In effect, despite of Obama being a highly popular outgoing president, the Democratic Party is at one of its lowest points in decades. Our next guest, Jonathan Tasini, wrote on CNN on Tuesday, "There is only one silver lining in Tuesday's election results, which will allow a con man, a pathological liar, a bold racist, and a sexual predator to succeed the first African-American president in the White House." Well, we are now joined by Jonathan Tasini, and we are going to explore what that silver lining is all about. Thanks for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So, Jonathan, since you wrote the book titled "The Essential Bernie Sanders and His Vision for America," how do you respond to this moment in history with a Trump presidency, for sure? How do you respond to the election?
Well, it's devastating. I think probably you and many of your viewers are having a similar experience, which is we still are waking up in the morning thinking, did this really happen? And the notion that someone, as you said, the first sentence of the piece I wrote, is a con man, a pathological liar, a sexual predator, a racist. The fact that he's going to be sworn into office as the president is kind of astonishing, but it isn't entirely astonishing when you look at the dysfunction and the incompetence of the Democratic Party.
All right. So in your piece, you said that there is a silver lining in all of this. So let's explore that. What is it?
I like to always, I'm an internal optimist, despite what the facts might tell you otherwise when you look out in the world and at reality. But I do think that, look, the Democratic Party has been, in my view, dysfunctional for a very long time. And what I mean by that is that we've been dominated by a corporate wing, what we call Clintonnomics, that goes back a quarter of a century. And I'm old enough to remember the battle around NAFTA in 1992-93 when Bill Clinton became president. And from that time on, the Democratic Party has been essentially following a very corporate-oriented agenda on economics. Now, it's not entirely been the case because there is a strong progressive wing, but Clintonomics, generally speaking, and we can talk about what that means, has been very dominant. And I think that the silver lining in the defeat on Tuesday is we can put that into the grave, that we can put the final nail in the coffin of Clintonomics, say it was a failed agenda, a failed ideology, and the progressives now can put forth an agenda which Bernie Sanders articulated in the campaign. And I believe had he been the nominee, he would have eviscerated Donald Trump, and that would have been a winning agenda.
All right. So how do we get rid of Clinton economics? Well, first define what it is in your articulation, and then tell us how we're going to defeat it, because we are actually going to be faced with the very opposite of greater concentration of capital and capitalist power in Washington.
Great two questions. So let's start with the definition. It is about believing in the free market, that the free market is like a god, that everything that is good is the free market. Now, of course, the Clintons have always said, oh, we have to have some protections and we have to have a moderating influence on it. But what the free market ideology meant was, as I said, free trade, so-called free trade, because it's not really about free trade, it's about corporate trade. It's about trade agreements that benefit corporations. It's about deregulation. If any of your listeners opens up their cable bill and they're outraged about the high prices of their cable bill, it's because of Bill Clinton. Because when Bill Clinton was president, he basically ushered in a huge deregulation of the media industry that allowed massive concentration of the media industry. It's about having a good relationship with Wall Street. And that goes back to Bill Clinton basically being the leader of ushering in Wall Street into the White House, into the Democratic Party, partly for fundraising reasons, which brought us the end of Glass-Steagall, which essentially, to make it a simple description, it essentially empowered the banks and Wall Street and the financial industry to basically do whatever they want, to pile on enormous amounts of risk, make a huge amount of profits, and that eventually led to the financial collapse that we are still digging ourselves out of, that many, many working people have never really recovered from. So that's, in a nutshell, what Clintonomics was. Now, to your point, how do we change that? Well, the first thing is we have to get rid of Clintonomics. Then those of us who are progressives, if you will, the political revolution, the Bernie Sanders movement, have to take over the Democratic Party. And there's a whole mechanism how to do that, not just at the Washington level, but the state level. So there are thousands of people who have been part of the Bernie Sanders movement who now want to run for office. And I want to encourage those people, and we have now an organization called Our Revolution, which is designed to try to help people running for mayor, run for state legislature, run for city council, and begin to take over the party at the local level. But to your final point, it's not going to be easy. I'm not saying this is going to happen tomorrow. We're facing some very dark, difficult times in the next couple of years and longer. And certainly because of the Trump election, we're facing a long period of time where the Supreme Court is likely to be in the hands of very conservative, right-wing, anti-progressive forces.
All right, Jonathan, so how do you suggest we do that? We really have to build a broad front here of those within the Democratic Party as well as outside the Democratic Party. The Green Party has taken a lot of flack for having allowed this Trump presidency to be, but we really need all the forces at hand in order to make sure that this is a one-term presidency for Trump.
Well, I think the unifying the unifying message and what will organize us will be Donald Trump, because what he will propose and what Republicans will try to force through will very much focus our minds, I believe. It'll be an attack on everything we hold dear, women's rights, the rights of LGBT. When you think about rights, labor rights, just go down the line. He will try to roll back, along with Republican help, just about everything we hold dear. So I think that will focus the mind. I know it's always a challenge for movements to work together, but we showed we could do that in the Bernie Sanders movement, and we just have to knit that together, keep our eyes on the prize, if I can use that cliche, and I think we can be successful.
All right, Jonathan, I thank you so much for joining us. Lots of people out there are looking for moral guidance at this point, and thanks for providing some of it. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on the Real News Network.